Hey guys, what's up? Jebber Game Jaws here. I'm coming to you guys today with a Dreamcast console overview. So if you don't know a whole lot about the Dreamcast, just sit back and relax and get ready to hear my thoughts on the console. Now I'm going to show you the hardware here. This is the console itself. I've always really liked the design of this. I thought it was really cool, especially when it came out. This console launched 9/9/99, so September 9th, 1999. I was 11 years old when this launched. For me, I was not even aware of the Saturn at the time, so this was really amazing to see Sega back in the stores. I remember my friend and I, Cameron, going to, I think, Toys R Us, and I remember seeing the display, and they had Sonic Adventure, and I was just so amazed by the graphics. The graphics were not like anything that we had seen at the time. At the time, I actually owned a PlayStation. He owned a Nintendo 64, and this thing was just leaps and bounds ahead of anything that I had ever experienced. I couldn't believe how smooth the edges of the characters were. Their faces were like completely there. There was no, none of that degradation that you see in the 32, 64-bit era. So this thing was really cool. I loved that it had 4 controller ports. This thing launched at $200, super affordable. Really, I'm I'm kind of amazed that I didn't see it for the amazingness that it was at the time. It's not that I didn't like the console, but for me, I had had such an amazing experience with Sony's PlayStation, and I knew that the PlayStation 2 was just around the corner. So, um, Sony just had me. I was such a huge, dedicated, loyal fan to them because the PlayStation had been so life changing to me, and I just wanted the second one, basically. So I didn't get the Dreamcast, but I was lucky enough to have 2 friends who did own them. My friends Michael and Pilgrim, their older brother had one, so we were all able to play on that whenever I would go over to their house, and also my friend Cameron ended up buying one. So it was really cool to play at his house, and we got to play a lot of multiplayer games, which was really fun. Again, those 4 controller ports were just awesome. The PS2 didn't even have those when that came out. They were still stuck on the 2 controller ports, which kind of to me shows like where Sony's mind was, because Sony to me is where I've always gotten my really really amazing one-player games. There have been some like 2-player games or multiplayer, but for me it's been the JRPG and kind of like those solo deep story experiences that were really awesome. Now I'd like to move on to the controller. The controller is right here. This has some things that go along with it, peripherals. I'll show you the controller without those in. There's actually a hole right here, which is where the VMU goes in. This is the memory card. It actually, you can play games on it, which was really cool. You could do things on this and then put it back in, and it would actually affect the game that you were playing in some cases. A lot of times when this goes in, there will be like a little screen on here. It'll show different things while you're playing the game, which I always thought was super cool. There's a sports game where when you're choosing your plays, you actually choose them up here, so your opponent's not able to see it. That's super amazing. At the time, too, I mean, can you imagine like how incredible that was? Here I have a Rumble Pack. This is not the official one. This is by Performance. I'd honestly like to get the official one. This one is a little bit rough. It's like very intense when it rumbles, but it works well enough for right now. Oh yeah, another interesting thing about this controller. So the cord comes out at the bottom, but it has this little spot right here where you actually stick the cord in. I don't know. This was definitely a one of a kind at the time, especially. Um, it was really just awesome looking. I really like the way it looks. I love the joystick over here, and the D-pad is okay. It sits a little bit high for me. It can be a little tough in some cases, but it's totally workable. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the dual analog thing. That hadn't quite come along yet. So it's got trigger buttons back here. The feel of it is a little interesting. I always feel like I kind of have to hold it forward a little bit. It's not the most ergonomic thing. It's good overall. It's not perfect, but it's kind of up to personal preference. So go ahead and give it a try if you think. You might like it. Um, More than anything, I just think that it was good for the time. And so, let's see here. Now, the reason, again, like I mentioned, was the PS2 was on the horizon, and that's why I didn't get a Dreamcast myself at the time. The Dreamcast came out with such a fury, but it was so short-lived. The Dreamcast only sold 10 million units worldwide, I believe is the number. So that's not very much at all. Now, I really like getting games for the Dreamcast. One of the reasons is that, in the same sense that I really like playing Sony games for the one-player experience, and role-playing games are kind of my favorite thing. The Dreamcast was the first time that we had an arcade-perfect console where there were ports from the arcade to the console, home console, that were absolutely the exact same game. And that was really mind-blowing at the time. And the Dreamcast definitely had a few games that were really good on their own. Um, Probably the number one game that I had fun playing back in the day was Soul Calibur. I would play this at my friend Michael and Pilgrim's house. We had a blast. Another game that Cameron actually owned was Power Stone, the first Power Stone. That was only a two-player game. Eventually we got Power Stone 2, which was a four-player game. It was very similar to Super Smash Brothers. Both of those games are on my to-buy list. I really like the Dreamcast console, and because I missed out on it so much at the time, having not owned one, I played it enough just to appreciate it. Another thing, honestly, if I could go back in time, I think I would have bought the Dreamcast earlier and actually put off the PS2 because, as we all know, the PS2's launch was pretty weak. There was not a whole lot to play for a while, and I could have definitely pushed that off a little bit. Being that I was between 11 and 12 years old, though, money was hard to come by. I had to save up for my PS2 for like months of not buying anything and doing every odd job that I could possibly come across. So, that got a little bit tough. So that's why I wasn't buying multiple consoles. It's tough being a kid. Man, one thing that I have to say too that is really, really incredible. So this came out in 1999. It was online capable. People were playing online, out of the box, 56K. I'm guessing that it wasn't very good. We were not that high tech. There was no way that we were going to be playing online, but I just think that's cool that it was there at the time. I don't know if you can still go online with it and actually play stuff. I've heard rumors that you can still play Phantasy Star online. That would be really cool. If that's true, I just think it'd be fun to try. I probably wouldn't get super into it. Something awesome that I learned recently, the Dreamcast, even though it came with component cables, it actually natively outputs at 420p. So this was actually a high definition console. All that you need is an adapter. There's a new adapter out by, it's called the Akira adapter, and it will connect right into the output, and then you connect an HDMI cord to it and put it on your HD TV, and it outputs in 420p. I'm super excited. It doesn't work for every single game, but it works for almost all the games, and it definitely works for most of the important ones. So I'm super excited about that. I thought I would point out a few of the absolute must-owns if you do buy a Dreamcast. First up, Sonic Adventure. I played this a lot at my friend Cameron's house. Some people complain about the controls. They say that it hasn't aged well. I'm an old gamer. I don't really care. The controls to me are fine. I loved seeing Sonic in the 3D realm, going super fast, having a blast. I like this game a lot. Coming up secondly, we played some Jet Grind Radio. This was so awesome, and it was only on the Dreamcast. Just very, very cool game where there were actually cel-shaded graphics, which are not my favorite, but they're a big deal, and at the time this was kind of a new thing. And you would actually go around town and you'd like tag things, which is taking spray paint and, spray painting them. All the while you're on rollerblades and you're grinding and running away from cops who come out and shoot at you. It was awesome. Absolute must own. Another one that ended up eventually being ported to other consoles, but started on the Dreamcast, was Crazy Taxi. An excellent arcade style, super fun, amazing port. The number one reason to own a Dreamcast, right here. This game is phenomenal. It is fucking awesome. You've got to play Shenmue if you've never played it. Shenmue 2, unfortunately, did not come out on the Dreamcast here in the States. They got it in the PAL region and also in Japan. We got it on the OG Xbox. So you can import the PAL version if you want. It doesn't have English voice acting, which to me is a downside because I got used to the voice actors in this game. So that's kind of, it'd be a little jarring to switch it up. But if you don't care, you can play it on the Dreamcast in Japanese with subtitles. As you guys probably are aware, Shenmue 3 is in the works, so get a hold of Shenmue, play Shenmue 2. It's not for everyone. I won't go super in depth here. You can find a lot of reviews on the game. I'm going to show it here though. For some people, they just don't get it. The first time that I played this game, I was like, this is super slow. This is not all that it's been cracked up to be. Little did I realize that is like such an amazing game. And I was glad that I finally revisited it years later and was able to understand how awesome it actually is. The other really cool thing about the Dreamcast, it had multiplats. It was out for about a year right alongside the PlayStation and the N64. So it actually got a lot of the games that were ported onto those systems as well. It just got, different ports of those. And this is the best way to play them because it has way better graphics than those. A couple of those that are notable: Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, really cool on the Dreamcast. This one I just picked up recently, Rayman 2 The Great Escape. This was on the N64. I'm not sure if it was on the PlayStation. Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles. I know this was on the PlayStation. I don't think it was on the N64, but I could be wrong about that. One of my personal favorites, perfect arcade port, Hydro Thunder for the Dreamcast. If you do pick this one up, make sure to get the hot new version, which doesn't have any glitches. The first one that they ported out had some problems, so make sure you get that. Anyways, love the Dreamcast. I continue to pick up games for it. It kind of fits this perfect spot for me where it just has so many fun arcade pick up and play. It has lots of fighting games. If you're a big fan of fighters, the Dreamcast has got you set. To me personally, there's no absolute set of like what's retro and what's not. As far as video game consoles go, to me the Dreamcast is where I cut off the retro point. Obviously, as years go by, PS2, GameCube, Xbox are becoming retro. For me personally, just because of when I was born, what experiences I had, this to me is kind of like the last of the old era before things became very new. So that's one of the reasons that it's such a special console for me. Also, just that I missed out on it so much at the time. Also, that I grew up with Sega, playing the Genesis so much, and the fact that they just did so much right. I feel really bad for Sega that this did not do better than it did. It should have done better. It's really sad that they had to go up against the PS2. I say that being someone who bought the PS2 and totally ignored the Dreamcast. It would have been really nice for Sega to be able to have survived that time because they really gave it their all and they really created something beautiful for us gamers. One thing that's nice about collecting for the Dreamcast as opposed to like the Saturn is just like insanely overpriced. It's so, maybe not overpriced, but it's just super expensive. The Dreamcast, there are some very expensive titles, but you can also get a whole lot of really good ones for really cheap. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that the Dreamcast was actually super easy to make burned copies of the games and pirate those. So much of the time, if you go to someone's house with a Dreamcast, you'll just see stacks and stacks of burned games. I think that's really nice for people like myself as a collector because you can find the real copies of these games, and a lot of other people have them. like there's not a lot, 10 million consoles sold, like there's not a ton of the Dreamcast games out there, but because of the piracy, there's enough to go around. A lot of people are just content with that. So I think that's something that keeps the price down a little bit. I'm hoping that it stays that way for a while, at least long enough for me to bulk up my Dreamcast collection. I have way more games, but I just thought those were the ones worth pointing out right now. So anyways, guys, I will talk to you later. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Check out the Dreamcast if you haven't. Post your memories of the Dreamcast. Let me know. You can do a video response or regular response. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Talk to me about the Dreamcast. What have been your experiences? Are you excited for Shenmue 3? Because I am super fucking stoked for Shenmue 3. Alright, peace. Later.